the mother that raised me, when it came time for my birthday, I was celebrated. And I just felt like, I was being tolerated, not celebrated. And that quality time wasn't there that I was expecting, And then I started feeling like the whole abandonment again.
Who am I?
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 This is Who Am I, Really? A podcast about adoptees that have located and connected with their biological family members. I'm Damon Davis, and today you're going to meet daughter Dee, who lives right here in Maryland with me. Dee had a wonderful upbringing where she was cherished and celebrated on her birthdays. When her adoptive mother passed away, Dee learned she was adopted, and her world turned into a question mark while mourning. As a late discovery adoptee, she faced secondary rejection, unanswered questions, and misattributed parentage. This is daughter Dee's journey. Dee grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She said she had a wonderful childhood going from kindergarten through college, feeling unconditional love from her parents. When Dee was 23 years old, she was a year out of college on Memorial Day weekend when her mom had gotten sick and she was rushed to the hospital. Dee's sister, who lived in Germany at the time, flew home to be with their mother, who was in critical condition.
And she comes home because we're all, trying to prepare for mom's passing and just the illness and everything that happened. And she tells me she was adopted. And I said, well, what about me? She's, well, I don't know about you, but here's the name of the agency where they adopted me from. And I said, well, when she gets well, we'll all sit down and talk about it. She never gets well. She dies. And I find out that the truth was that I was adopted as well. They went through the same agency for both of us. And my mother takes a secret to the grave with her.
Wow.
And then my adopted father was still living. And I remember making him a nice dinner and sitting down with him and saying, Dad, when were you going to tell us? And he said they kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And after a while, he said it was like, why bother to say anything?
Jeez, that is crazy. Wow. First, I'm sorry for how you found out, to have it come about at a time of such grief already as you're losing your mother. But then to have this earth-shattering information come at you at the same time must have been absolutely horrible. Wow. Can I ask, do you recall any feeling whatsoever of being different than your family when you were growing up, before you knew?
Yeah, I thought I was different, but I asked questions, but I accepted them and I didn't investigate further. So we were raised in a Christian home. We went to the African Methodist Episcopal Church every Sunday. And it was a traditional family life. My father, he was the provider. He worked, and my mother stayed at home when we were small, when we were young. And we had good family values, good traditions, always celebrated birthdays, holidays. And it was the American dream. My father, later, I remember interviewing him before he died. I said, well, what were your dreams? What did you always want? He said, everything I ever wanted was a family, a house, and a pension. And that's what he got,
Old school
and he was
values.
a World War II veteran. So, what more could you ask for?
Yeah. Yeah, simple
And
life.
Yeah. And he was 12 years my mother's senior. So when my mother adopted me, I was 2.5 months. And she was 35 and he was 47.
Oh, wow.
But he was older. So he was like a father and a grandfather to me, all in one.
Dee shared that her sister told her that they were both adopted, and then she just kept on telling her story. I figured that had to have been a surreal moment for her to learn something so life-altering about herself. So I asked Dee to go back and tell me more about the moment she heard the news.
So ironically, I was sitting on my childhood bed. I had a twin-size bed, and I still have it today. And we were sitting in my room, and she starts telling me, she found these papers before she left for Germany, and she wanted to look into it more and found out she was really adopted. And then I was like shocked, and then I said, well, what about me? And she says, well, I don't know about you, but here's the name of the agency. And I was really focused on mom getting well. Like I was thinking about it, but then I wasn't thinking about it because I wanted the priority was to make sure she got well, and then we could all sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
And she never got well.
So in the aftermath of her passing, what went through your mind then, going back to, I mean, I'm sure there's this time of grieving, but it's also probably some confused grieving too. If there's this question of her parentage to you, like how did you end up getting to a point of actually thinking about your status as an adoptee versus their biological child?
Yeah, so the year was 1991, and I was a year out of college. So I was a young woman at 23, just finding my way in the world. I didn't even have my first job yet. Already I get my student loan paperwork in the mail that I owe this, and I have my degree in one hand, no job, but I'm also grieving, the loss of my mother. And I decided that I wanted to do a search, and still not processing, that all this is really happening. Mom's gone. I found out I'm adopted. I'm trying to find a new career, start my life, and trying to get counseling and prayer and all of that. And I decided to do a search, and I found my birth mother like by Labor Day. My mother died June 14th, and by Labor Day, she was found.
In September. Wow,
Yes.
really?
And it was pretty quick.
It does sound
Yeah.
quick. How did you do that?
Yeah. So fortunately, I had a social worker that worked at the agency that read me all my non-identifying information. And this is one thing I like about having an intercessor, someone that could do the work for you, versus nowadays people are writing these letters and trying to do it themselves. But the social worker had reached out to her and, told her that, your daughter's been found, would you like to meet her? And I remember her prepping me before all that unfolded, after she read that it was like the 2 typewritten pages, non-identifying information. And she says, now I need to warn you, they may not want to meet you. And then she said, or they may be deceased.
And what did you think when you heard that?
I thought, okay, I need to be prepared for this. But at the same time, I wanted to meet them because I wanted medical information that I didn't have for 23 years. I'm going to the doctors all my life, giving them my adoptive parents' information. I wanted to see some pictures to see who I looked like because I struggled with some body images growing up. And the whole genetic mirroring was important to me. And at the time where I had this loss, I wanted to receive some gains, as far, not anything financial, but just more love and support.
Yeah, some wins in the win column versus,
Right.
for lack of better words, the losses that you're feeling in their life due to
Exactly.
your mother's passing, your now clearer understanding of your relation or non-relation to her, etc. That is a lot going on. Wow.
Yeah, and then I started thinking about my own mortality as well. Thinking about what if something happens to me, or if I wait several years to do the search, they may be deceased, the birth parents, or other people may die.
Yes.
And I should put this off. Even though I was still grieving, I was a young woman. I had this sense of urgency not to wait any longer.
Did you have this feeling? So the process to search for someone is not, you don't just, you initiate the process, but you have to fill out forms and you have to answer questions and you have to be you have to speak to your social worker and all this other kind of stuff. Did you have this feeling of disbelief? Like, I can't believe this is actually happening. Like, I have to actually do this.
I was in shock. I remember when she read me all the information, I was like, this is someone else's life. It was a soap opera or some TV movie or something. I said, this isn't real.
Yeah.
Like, huh? Like, how could I have been naive all these years and not knew this? It was just mind-boggling. Like, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. But as we said, if you're raised in the shroud of an untruth, you don't know that there's truth on the other side of some veil, right?
Right.
You just don't
Right.
know what's there. And I'm sure it was very shocking to learn that this had been, the true, what they call chapter 1 of your life
Right.
versus what you had grown up to believe. Hearing her non-identifying information, Dee learned some of the details of her beginning that were gaps in her story that she hadn't thought about asking her parents. She didn't ask about her birth weight, for example, but that fact was in the records. Dee had been born in a leap year, so she wondered if her birth date, March 1st, had really been February 29th. All kinds of questions she never had before were bubbling up. Dee got information about her birth mother's life, the woman's siblings, and information about their careers. Back in the 1990s, the White Pages, a phone book listing all kinds of businesses, was the information accessibility of the day. All of Dee's maternal uncles and one aunt were listed in the White Pages, so they were easy to locate. Using information her uncles and aunt provided, the social worker was able to locate Dee's birth mother. The intercessor contacted Dee to say she had found the woman and she wanted to meet Dee. This was unfolding in 1991, so the women began writing letters to one another. Dee didn't meet the woman who lived in Georgia until the following year, after she had already met her uncles and cousins in Philadelphia. Each uncle met Dee individually with their wives and children. Then, on Labor Day weekend, everyone got together for the holiday, except Dee's birth mother.
Yeah, everyone was looking at me, trying to see who I look like. I mean, looking at my nostrils and my face. Literally inspecting me, like checking me out, because it's the kind of thing like mama's baby, papa's maybe. You remember when your sister was pregnant,
Right,
So
right.
they're all just checking me out and everything. And, I felt like I was on display, and kind of like in the Antoine Fisher movie where he met all the relatives and they were, this is your cousin so-and-so, this is your aunt so-and-so. A lot of attention was on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's the same type of thing. Like you're the star, like you're the one everyone wants to be, and they've got a million questions.
Yes. It's an odd sense of like starting to get answers and closure, but pressure because there's so many eyes on you, and there's this analysis of you in this moment and an evaluation of where you've been leading up to that moment, right? Who is this person walking in the door, walking into this event, and how do they look like us? Are we gonna like them? Are they gonna like us? All of these other things, like there's a lot on those. So you made it through this meeting. I presume you found some folks that you like and connected with, but you still haven't met your birth mother yet. How did that come about?
Well, I talked to her on the phone and we were letter writing and swapping pictures and all of that. But
Could you
I
see
didn't meet
yourself
her.
in her?
I saw some characteristics, some facial features, some physical characteristics. Yeah, but I didn't meet her right away. I waited till the following year, March of '92, and I decided that I wanted to meet her around my birthday, during my birthday month. And I thought, oh, I'll meet my birth mother during my birthday month. Everything will be grand. And I remember my father, my adoptive father, we flew down there together. And he stayed with her father, who lived down the street, my grandfather, from her. And then I stayed with her and her husband and a son. And it was like, she wanted to call Oprah. And I was like, no, we're not calling Oprah. Like, even though she was joking, but I just was like, I really wanted to have a one-to-one chat, in person about everything. I had a lot of questions. And the plan was that I would stay with her, and I did for a week. But she didn't take off any time from work. She worked every day and just spent time in the evenings.
Really?
And that wasn't what I was expecting. I didn't know how to manage expectations back then because the mother that raised me, when it came time for my birthday, I was celebrated. And I just felt like, I was being tolerated, not celebrated. And that quality time wasn't there. that I was expecting. And then I started feeling like the whole abandonment again, like, oh, I'm not being put first. I'm not being made a priority. Like all those feelings were coming up. And you'll hear some birth mothers say, well, I put you up for adoption or relinquished you or placed you because you were a priority. And others that feel like and might feel differently. It's all semantics as far as the wording and the decisions that were made.
Wow.
But, I really wanted some quality time, some bonding. And I didn't get that because she didn't take off the whole week.
So she would get up, go to work every day, come home. And when we come home, we're tired. Like you don't have the energy to put into an entire reunion. You come home, you just kind of want to do one or two errands and then put your feet up. So I could see how that would leave you very empty, that there was not much given to you in the aftermath of going to work, let alone, as you've said, getting up and going to work every day. Like that was clearly an avoidance tactic, it sounds like, to sort of say, you can come sort of meet me, but I'm not changing my life for you. But it feels like it was definitely an avoidance thing. And, I always try to remind adoptees that we return and bring back so many memories from the time when the woman got pregnant, from all of the emotion she felt to all of the pressures she had to, everything that she felt in the aftermath. And for it to even a year of being in contact with her and prepping for leading up to that meeting, still seeing you walk through the door is a jarring experience. And it probably was really tough for her. And I assume she needed that avoidance, but I understand exactly where you're coming from too. Like, we agreed to this, so let's meet in the middle a little bit. I'd like for you to take a couple hours off work here and there so you and I can wrap a bit. I hear you.
Yeah, and I think she also, she did tell me she had a migraine, and I think if she had have just told her supervisor, look, I have this long lost daughter, she's coming to town, I'd like to take a few days off, I would hope that any supervisor would be understanding.
Sure.
Would be willing to do that. But I think also when I look back, because it's been 31 years ago, that she didn't do her work, she didn't have the counseling, the preparation to prepare. And I still was talking to the social worker who read me the non-ID information. And I still keep in contact with her, really built a good relationship with her. And I'm always big on prayer and counseling and getting support. And I felt like I was, ready to do the work because I didn't even have a job yet. So I had time to go down there to meet her. I didn't have to take off from work. I had the time, and I was glad that I did it when I did it before I really started my first job and getting into my career.
But can you tell me a little bit about what it was like? What was the first meeting like? This is a big event. You have traveled to meet this woman with your own father. What was it like when you guys met for the very first time?
We met at the airport. They picked us up, and it was just surreal. Like, I can't believe this is happening. I had just lost my mother, who I thought was my biological mother, a couple months ago. And here I was gaining another mother that gave me up for adoption. I didn't know all my life. She didn't even tell her husband about me or her son. Yeah, she eventually divorced him later after she finally met me. But, none of them knew. Like, only her siblings knew and her parents and maybe the siblings' wives knew. But nobody knew. So it was like still these secrets. And my adoptive parents hadn't planned on telling me. She probably hadn't planned on telling her husbands.
Right.
Here we go again with the secrets.
That's right.
And I feel like you can't keep keeping these secrets because you don't get healed. It's just, you got to deal with your past.
Yeah, I agree. And it takes some strength to do that, but you also have to recognize that the past is in the past, and it's, there comes a time when you do have to deal with it. So I'm with you on that, but that must have been really tough to sort of be there present with her, but not have her be fully present with you, and to know that the same secret that you had discovered you grew up in was pervasive through her life too. You were a secret over there on her side of your story as well. Dee admitted she got some answers and a bit of closure after meeting her birth mother. The woman shared that she had been 20 years old, was going to be an unwed mother, and with their family trying to put siblings through school and money was tight, she had no support to be a mother. Dee said her adoptive father, who was older and more like a grandfather to Dee, was just fine in the whole situation. Dee was living at home at the time of her reunion, and her mother had just passed, so Dee and her dad bonded even more as she moved into a caregiving role with him, and their secret was out. Dee said she got the sense her dad was following his wife's wishes not to reveal their children's adoption. As the saying goes, happy wife, happy life. I asked how Dee's relationship with her birth mother was after that first meeting.
Bittersweet.
How do you mean?
It wasn't the same. Like after that, I spent that week down there and we didn't do any quality time. It was hard to bond after that. And still on my birthday, it's still no celebration, no cards, nothing.
Ever
And
in any subsequent year?
maybe once or twice, card or a phone call. But it was always about her, I'm the one that brought you in the world. And, it's kind of like this, a victim, like, of all of this.
That's
And
interesting.
And, my thing is, none of us asked to be here. None of us asked to be born, but we're here. And to go from a life from kindergarten through college of being loved unconditionally, provided for, celebrated, and then all of a sudden someone doesn't want to celebrate you or just see the blessing, that you are in their life. There's just a lot of irony there.
You're right. It's interesting to think through the fact that the way you were raised was so loving, nurturing, focused on, and that to go back and get answers from the person who brought you into this world, they were not the kind of person or not in the space perhaps to give you that same kind of love, connection, attention, nurturing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The adoption and the love that you got was so valuable, probably in creating sort of who you are as a person, in that going back to seek answers didn't actually add much to that, it seems. It seems like you got everything you needed from your parents, which is pretty awesome.
Did. I definitely did.
Wow. Good for you. That's really, really
I mean, I
cool.
felt sad, I would have like to have gotten the more emotional support because I was a very sensitive kid and I cried and, I was just told to be, I was embraced, but then at the same time told to be strong. Little did I know I was going to need that strength later in life.
Dee learned that the man she thought was her birth father, a very tall man who was headed to the NBA, died in a car accident 2 months after she was born. Dee didn't get to meet that man, but she did meet many of his contemporaries, who were mostly clergy in their older years. She learned that her alleged birth father was only one of 2 black basketball players on his final team, and she got to meet the other black player, and they stayed in touch.
And all of the priests, they took me out to lunch and the alumni director and everything. And, and I did a lot of research with trying to pick up articles and everything. And I met his mother and she was just kind of in denial. Like she didn't think I looked like him. And she was wondering, why did I wait 23 years to find her? And I said, well, I was just finding out, I wasn't told. And she just didn't think I looked like when I wanted to do a DNA test, but she didn't want to do it because she was old school. She just, well, you had a good life and why rock the boat, type of thing. But she said she was bitter. She said she felt like my birth mother should have come to her and said, look, your son got our daughter pregnant. What are we going to do about it? She felt like her and her parents should have come to her. And she said instead they put me up for adoption and didn't even consult her. She said, I could have raised you myself because her alleged birth father was her only son. And his father had died. So it was hard for me to bond with her.
Dee said she sent her supposed paternal grandmother flowers, food, and called her, trying to open a door to create a bond, but it was always Dee reaching out. There was no reciprocity in their relationship. The bond never materialized. The woman moved to Maryland, living under her nephew's care, and Dee tried to visit her, especially because they lived only a few minutes apart. But the meetings were never allowed, and Dee kinda gave up. In 2017, Dee learned the woman had died. Concerned for medical information, she applied for her paternal grandmother's death certificate, from which she learned the woman had dementia. That medical knowledge influenced Dee's desire to do a DNA test to learn more about herself. She was working from home during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2021, and commercials for 23andMe kept coming on TV. They appeared on her laptop too, and it felt like a sign that she needed to just submit a sample and get some health answers. Dee thought maybe someone else on her paternal side would show up on her results, who would be more receptive to knowing her. Dee submitted her 23andMe sample and received her results.
So I go in, I do the search, and this other name comes up. And
Paternal
it's not the
connection.
name I was told. Yeah.
Wow.
The whole misattributed parentage of it.
So you
And
got a direct connect to your biological father on an ancestry DNA test.
yes,
Wow.
it was 100% match.
Oh my God.
It was a whole nother name and everything. And I'm like, what? And then there were email messages in there too. So now this biological father was one of 10 siblings. He's the oldest. And he had 4 sisters and then like 5 other brothers. And he was the oldest. And the youngest sibling is a girl, and she's 5 years my senior. So she's young. She's in the 50s decade with me, his younger sister. So she was in the database, and she was emailing me. She said, "No, I think you're my niece. It's either my oldest brother or the next oldest brother." Because it said that she and I shared a percentage of DNA. And I have a brother too, and he was in there, and our DNA matched up. He was like, "No, I think you're my sister." I was like, "Huh?"
Oh my
So I
gosh.
said, so I'm like, well, let me talk to the father, this new father number 3, 'cause at this point I've had 3 fathers.
Oh my gosh, you're right. I didn't even think of that.
Remember David the show, To Tell the Truth? Will the real father please stand up?
Right. Oh my gosh.
That's
That
how
is
it felt, like To
crazy.
Tell the Truth, the game
Yeah,
show.
I
Right?
remember that show. Oh my gosh.
So, but then I was like, DNA does not lie. From what I've been told, it's not lie. So then, I ended up talking to him, and also the other irony is I moved to the D.C. area for work 14 years ago in 2008. President Obama was running for office. It was an exciting time to be here, and I didn't have anyone here, family related. I had college friends that lived here, coworkers, but didn't think I had any family here. And all of them are living here in the D.C. area, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia.
Wow.
They grew up, most of them were born in South Jersey, but they were raised in Arlington, Virginia.
Unreal. You didn't think you had anybody here, and quite literally, the people you're related to were all around you.
Yeah. And they came at a time where I desperately wanted family, during this pandemic, like wanting to connect.
Unreal.
So, but my birth father's in Oregon, Portland, Oregon. He's the only one out west. Everybody's here in the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to talk to him on the phone. We bonded, and I ended up meeting him last May. He's a golfer. He came out for a golf tournament. And my 2 brothers came. I met them. It was, once again, surreal. Like, this can't be happening.
So tell me though about this first connection with him though, because that's an important, huge step. If you didn't know he was your birth father, it seemed like
No,
he
he
wouldn't
didn't
have
know I
known
was
you.
either.
Exactly.
He didn't know I was. He didn't know I was given up for adoption, let alone he had a daughter.
He had no idea that you were conceived.
No.
So what was your outreach to him like?
Yeah, I gave him all this. I gave him the non-ID information. And he had spent some time in Philadelphia. They didn't have a relationship. It was just an occurrence.
Right.
Based on when I was conceived. So. But he remembered the facts and the incident and everything. He's accepted me. Like, he hasn't denied me.
Oh, that's great.
And he's happy. He has a daughter. He has 2 sons already that are younger than me. One's 4 years younger, and one's, I want to say, 8 years younger than me.
And he's told them about you. Have you connected with them?
I met them. I met them all last year.
And
they
how
came
was
to the
it?
concert. It was good. Yeah, it was a good reunion.
That's good.
It was a shock. It's a lot. It's still a lot to process, but
For sure. So as you reflect now on your life, I'm sure you've thought back on, as you said, questions that you asked, but didn't ask all of the full questions and didn't get answers to. And then all of this journey that you've been through where you've had multiple potential fathers, connection to your biological mother that, didn't necessarily work out in the warmest of ways. Like, what do you think about as a late discovery adoptee getting plunged into this universe of discovery and questioning and things like that? Like, what goes through your mind as you reflect on your journey?
That God has this master plan that we don't always understand. And I've been very reflective and very spiritual. I think about some verses in the Bible. There's one that says, I saw you before you were born. Every day was recorded in my book, and you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And I just think about those things, that this was all part of a plan, like a divine manifestation, and how everything unfolded was divine timing and spiritual alignment. And, it's a higher power at work. Like, I can't explain any of it. It's beyond comprehension.
Yeah. You said it. It is beyond comprehension. It's hard to fathom and out of our control, isn't it? It's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, I will say, as far as trust, I've had to work on building trust with people because of it, because I've struggled with anxiety. I get anxious about things. I'm also attached too quickly, too soon with friends, opposite sex relationships, and knowing that I really have to get to know people, and it takes time. Building relationships. It's a process, and not trying to control the pacing of things. Just let things flow and don't control the outcomes. Try to control the outcomes.
And you feel like that is attributable to your adoption experience?
Yes, I do. I think it's all relative. I really do. Because I was a very trusting child, but I look back, there was some naiveness. I just believed, your parents, you're going to believe what they say, but they tell you what they want you to know too.
Right. But it's funny. You posit it as naivete, but it can't be naive if you don't know enough to know that you should question hard. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, you're right.
So it's really fascinating. But it's great that you're in this place of self-examination and recognizing like some of these missteps that I've had could be attributable to how I was brought up, my experiences, the truths that I have learned about myself, and sort of discovering myself going forward. So really fascinating.
Sure. And I work for the federal government, but my passion is coaching. And I really feel like I've turned my pain into my purpose.
Oh, that's really cool.
Helping others, whether it's through I'm in a lot of the adoption support groups. And so I try to help people move forward. Like, I'm talking to them and I see where they're really going backwards. And it's like, no, we have to move forward. We can reflect on the past, but we don't want to stay there.
That's great. I love that. You're absolutely right. You can reflect on it, but you don't want to stay there. You'll stagnate and you can't advance if you're standing still. So that's great that you're helping to push people forward and help them discover their healthy new self, right?
Right.
Really.
And we can't take on and be responsible for what happened to us, but we're responsible for our healing.
Yes, I agree with that. You're responsible for your healing. Well said. Really cool. Well, Daughter D, tell me a little bit, just real quick. Do you want to share why you refer to yourself as Daughter D?
Well, for one, it's an alliterative phrase. I think it flows well, but also my birth father, that's what he calls me, Daughter D. And I like it.
Yeah. It's funny how we get endearing things from the people in our lives, and you say, you know what, I really like that. And you hope that it sticks, and you facilitate it sticking. So I can appreciate where you're coming from. Really cool. D, thank you so much for being here with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Damon. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you.
No, of course, my pleasure. And I know that this late discovery journey is a hard one to go through, but it sounds like you really are sort of pushing forward, as you said, recognizing what has happened, but being responsible for your own healing.
Yes.
That's exactly where you need to be. And I'm so grateful to you for supporting other people and getting to that space too. That is super important. So well done.
Thank you. And hopefully we can get together in Maryland since
I
we're
would love
fellow
that.
Marylanders.
Marylanders, right around the corner from each other.
And fellow adoptees. We're kindred spirits all the way.
No doubt. Really cool, Dee. Thank you so much for being here. You take care, all right?
Thank you. You
All
too.
the best. Bye-bye.
All righty. Okay, bye.
Hey, it's me. Daughter Dee lived a wonderful young life, not knowing she was adopted. When her adoptive mother passed away, her adoption was revealed and questions arose in her head. Dee was able to locate her birth mother, but the woman wasn't equipped to be in reunion with Dee, and their relationship faded. Seeking paternal answers, Dee learned through DNA that the man she thought was her birth father wasn't the right person. Finally, the real guy brought acceptance into her life, helping her to feel whole. Dee and I did finally meet up for lunch here in Washington, D.C. at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Later, she told me that I helped her make a breakthrough on her paternal side of the family. That's what adoptees supporting one another is all about, helping to navigate every unexpected situation with the hope for a breakthrough. I'm Damon Davis, and I hope you found something in daughter Dee's journey that inspired you, validates your feelings about wanting to search, or motivates you to have the strength along your journey to learn, who am I really? If you're interested in some Who Am I Really merch with that cool logo with the heart with the missing puzzle piece, you can find links at whoamireallypodcast.com. You can follow me on Instagram at Damon L. Davis and follow the podcast at WAI Really. If you like the show, please take a moment to leave a 5-star review in your podcast app or wherever you're listening. Your ratings really do help others to find the podcast too. Finally, I hope you'll check out my story in my memoir, Who Am I Really?, available on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. It's a quick, really interesting story that I hope you'll add to your reading list.